Come down. Ooh, you make my high come down. Always tripping when you come around. Never have to cut you out like right now. You see, I don't have to drive me. You can say that for your mama. Maybe you should smoke some. Me try to marijuana. I was never you good. The vibe was straight. Showed you a couple of things and they feel strange. I treated you right. Everything was a gift from a time to your bag and the color on your lip.
Welcome to Seahawks Man to Man podcast, powered by Blue Wire. Shout out to the new company. My name is Michael Sean Dugard. You guys can follow me on whatever Elon Musk is calling that app these days. My @ name has not changed. It's also right under my chin. For folks who are watching this on YouTube, MikeDugar. Shout out to everyone who also is watching, listening via our YouTube channel. Seahawks Man to Man is the name of the channel. That is Seahawks Man, the number 2 man. That is the case also on Instagram and on TikTok. So make sure you hit us up on there, follow, like, share, whatever the millennials or Z boomers, whatever generation is doing these days. We appreciate all the love and support. Chris, go ahead, talk to him.
What is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Christopher Kidd. You can follow me on Twitter at KIDD206 and that's CKid206. Also on Blue Sky as well. I need to be better on posting on there. I got all these followers and I'd be saying like 2 things a week. So I need to be better on Blue Sky. Give you guys some more entertainment, whether it's Seahawks or whatever I got going on. But we appreciate all the love and support. We see it. So thank you very much for all that. We got a special show for you guys today, don't we, Mike?
Yeah. I think first off-season guest, I believe.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yep.
There we go. That's good. Yeah. No, I'm excited about this one. A fellow ball knower, hashtag ball knower, like that. Let's bring him on. We have the homie Derrik Klassen. He does great work over at The Athletic, a colleague of ours. Now I've been following him long before that as well. He described himself as Robert Mays' right-hand man earlier before we were recording, which is fair. They do great work over there on The Athletic Football Show. But Derrik in his own right does good work as well. Derrik, what up, man? Welcome to the Seahawks Man to Man podcast. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here, man. The Seahawks fan base. I think a lot of the right people in the Seahawks fan base like me, like you, guys, Griff, Maddie. It's because, like you said, we're all ball knowers. We know what's going on with the Seahawks. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, Derrik, we're at a time right now where the gap between like Seahawk fans who like watch a game, even just watch it back once, versus just kind of watching it with their friends on a Sunday afternoon, drinking or whatever. Like the opinions, the gap there is just massive. And for a while there, it was like player specific. It was like, oh, I think Jamal Adams stinks. Oh, I love Jamal Adams, or something like that. But now it's just like the whole team. It's like either you're just in disarray right now, or you're just like very hopeful for the future. There's no middle right now over here in Seahawks land, and it's kind of ugly right now.
Yeah, everyone wants to be the winner, or we're trash and we need to just scrap it, which especially when it comes down to the quarterback position, that's the only way that people talk about it. So
unfortunately, let's try some nuance. I'm gonna bring you in here to what I'm unofficially calling a Geno Smith civil war right now. He has divided the fan base. There is no middle really. It's either we're getting told, hey, Mike and Chris, we got to get rid of Geno. He'll never get to a Super Bowl. He throws too many interceptions. Like, this is bad, versus like, yo, John Schneider needs to finally give this guy anything more than just 5 dudes off the street in front of him, because Geno is a baller and he'll take it to the promised land. I feel like I know the answer to this, but Derrik, where are you on the Geno civil war?
I'm pro Geno, man. Like, come on. It's one of those things where I think I'm glad you mentioned the offensive line, because the thing I go back to a lot, when he first took over in 2022, the offensive line wasn't great, but it was like league average, maybe slightly below that. And it was just enough to let Geno's like hang in the pocket. I'm going to throw all of these seam routes, all these go balls. I'm willing to throw into the cover 2 hole. Like, it unlocked his aggressive style enough. And he was a way better pocket manager than he had ever been in his career, whether it was like in New York or his 1 year in Los Angeles, whatever it was. And so it kind of came together with this perfect marriage. The last 2 years, the offensive line, be it injuries or them just struggling to figure out the interior, they have not allowed like the best part of his skill set to be facilitated. And I think that's why you see, sometimes he does throw interceptions, because they're making him throw 45 times behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league. Like, most guys would either throw a lot of picks like he does, or would just completely cower and throw the ball away a lot, which is like, I guess it doesn't pop up in the stat sheet, but it's really annoying if you start to watch like the way that Derek Carr operates sometimes. Like that's not fun or good either. So I'm definitely pro Geno. I think if they fix the offensive line even a little bit, that this would be a pretty high powered passing offense again.
Chris, when was it that I text you? It's funny you mentioned. I'm laughing there because you brought up Derek Carr. I think I was, they just hired Clint Kubiak. And I've been watching. When did I text you that, Chris? It was like a month ago. Where I was just like,
yeah, it was like right after the hire. You're like, Chris, I'm going to do some film watching Derek Carr. This guy stinks.
It's like because I had been watching it, but I just I wasn't paying attention. Then I watched. I was like, oh my god, this is not great.
The thing with Derek Carr is that it's not like he's quarterback 32 or anything, right? Like he's quarterback 20, whatever it is. He's like a perfectly serviceable quarterback. The problem is he's the most boring way to get to quarterback 20. Like he just wants to throw it short all the time, checks it down, like doesn't really do anything that's that interesting. He's actually a decent athlete, but doesn't use it all that much. And then every now and then you see it's like, whoa, he throws the post route to Rashid Shaheed. That's incredible. And he just like won't do it again for a while, or he'll wait until they're down 3 scores in the fourth quarter. And it's like, dude, let's win the game a little bit earlier. Let's at least try.
I think between listening to you, Robert Mays, I think I throw Nate Tyson here as well. I think Geno is kind of just like he satisfies like a style preference for me almost too. Like statistically and all that stuff, film is great, but then I've grown to like really enjoy the style versus like Derek. Kirk Cousins falls in this too. Like in the Netflix doc he was in, I think it was like, what was it, 4th and 5 or whatever in the playoff game they had.
The Giants game.
Kirk checked it down because that was the read or whatever. But it was like, Kirk, the season's over now because he took the completion and he was like still justifying it. And I was just like those guys I don't like, because we know on 4th and 5 or whatever, whether it's actually not 4th and 5, but 4th and 5 season on the line, whatever's down the field, a guy like Geno's going to try. Whether he hits it or not is whatever. I think stylistically, I'm like, okay, Geno guy, Stafford guy, like those have kind of become my guys, the big game hunters, so to speak.
The guys who give the play a chance. That's all I want, man.
Yeah.
It might not be perfect every time, but if you give me a chance good enough and you have a good enough arm, that's usually enough for me.
I'm curious, Derek, how much of this vitriol, I don't even want to call it hate, but just disgust of Geno is because he was a backup for so long. And now that he's in the spotlight and he had a good season in 2022, as you mentioned, maybe that's just now, that's old news and we need a quarterback of the future. How much do you think of that is just because he has been a backup for his career?
That's what's fascinating. I think it's so many things. I think it goes back even to when Geno Smith was a prospect. He was supposed to be a first-round guy, and then he fell to the second round, and people thought he was immature early on in his career. Obviously, he gets punched in the face by a teammate. So I think that even if nobody talks about it now, it's still something that lingers with you when you think about Geno Smith. And then, like you said, he spent 7-8 years as a backup before he finally got another chance in Seattle. And I think all of that, people like to have this idea that maybe 2022 was just this flash in the pan and that he's never going to be that good again, even though the last 2 years he has been that good individually. So I think there's a lot of that. I also think one thing that Seahawks fans maybe struggle with a little bit is that Geno Smith is quarterback, I don't know, 10, 12, whatever you want to say. He's firmly above average to me, but the roster is like, and he's an older guy, but the roster is maybe not immediately ready next year to compete. And so I think people are just caught in this window of like, the quarterback's decent enough, but he's kind of old. I don't know if we're going to be able to compete next year for a Super Bowl. Like, I think because of the way that the roster is in such a weird spot, I think it almost like ignites how volatile the Geno Smith conversation can be.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
No, he's right, and it's not great. It is not great. If anyone, you guys listening right now, if you're ever bored, I have a tweet I think from 2 months ago where I said, all right, for the cut Geno crowd, cool, let's accept that as a premise. Who you want? And I have like 500 replies on that tweet, and none of them are great. It's bad. It's a lot more Dylan Gabriel than I expected, which probably speaks to the transition that I'm going now to the rest of the QB market. Like even if we just take Geno out of it and what we like about him, like when you look at this free agent class and you look at the guys in the draft, all the way from the Louisville guy to Cam Ward to Shador, Jackson Dart, all these guys, like where are you on just the 2025 quarterback market right now?
So I'll start with the free agents. It seems like, I mean, Sam Darnold might get tagged. I know that there was some talk of that, but he is probably the most likely quarterback to actually get paid on the market, at least through specifically the Seattle lens. He's just a worse version of Geno. He holds the ball a lot. He takes some sacks and throws some picks. They have really talented arms, but like he's just a worse version of that with less film to suggest that he's a good player. So I don't understand why that would be anybody's options. Like I guess he's younger, but other than that, he has no advantage over Geno specifically. And then none of the other free agent quarterbacks do it for me. Like so that's kind of a non-starter there. with,
That was quick.
I'm quick to the point with some of these quarterbacks. I don't like them. Speaking of that, the draft guys, I think there are two serious-ish quarterbacks in this class. I just can't do it with the other guys. Like Jackson Dart, Lane Kiffin quarterback, not touching him. Tyler Shuck is like 26 and has been hurt like 3 different times. Not happening for me. Shadur Sanders, I think, is a decent prospect, but he is of the caliber of prospect that went like where Andy Dalton went, where Jimmy Garoppolo went, Derek Carr, these guys who went in the top to middle of second round, where it's like, this can be a nice starter for us, but we probably need to spend our first round pick on something like an AJ Green to really make sure that we can get the most out of this guy. Cam Ward is the one to me that I think has like actual franchise quarterback potential. I think it's a lower possibility than we got from a lot of the guys last year, like Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams. Like, I don't think he's that caliber of prospect. But back to what you said about the stylistic thing, there's something about Cam Ward, man. He's going to hang in there. He's a big game hunter. He wants to throw that seam ball. I've only charted 3 of his games so far. I swear I've never seen somebody as willing to throw the cover 2 hole as that guy. So he's just there's a lot of stuff I like about him, even if it's a little imperfect right now.
Okay, I didn't plan on this, but is one of the games you watched of Cam? Is it the Cal game?
I haven't gotten there yet. No, I will get there, but I'm going like in chronological order.
Okay, yeah, you're right. I think that was later in the year. That feels like a very Cam game. That
I know exactly what that means.
Yeah, they were because Chris and I are both Washington State grads, and so I watched Cam a lot, at Miami because I was like, okay, how's he look? I'm kind of rooting for him, really happy for him that he's got all the success. So I'm watching that game. It feels like very Cam. That was a lot going on. I think they were down 1 million points in the fourth quarter of that game. Very fun. I'm glad that we're getting some other opinions post combine on some of the other guys, because maybe you're seeing this like I am too. It feels like I'm taking crazy pills that like everyone's trying to just feed me Tyler Shuck, feed me Jackson Dart in the first round right now, and I'm just like, what is everyone else seeing that I'm not?
I just can't do it with some of these guys, man. It's just one of those things. I think coming off of a year where we got 6 quarterbacks in the first round, I think people are just convinced that like, oh, we can just do that more regularly now. We can just get a bunch of these guys. When in reality, the thing is we took all of the good college quarterbacks into one draft class, and now it's like the college game had to reload a little bit. So there's just not that many guys left for this draft class. And so, yes, they're trying to feed us the 26-year-olds who have like transferred 3 different times. And like, I can't do it. And because like, I think people have talked about like, oh, the transfer in the age, that stuff kind of doesn't matter. That can be true with a guy like Jaden Daniels. But to me, so like Jaden Daniels actually looked pretty good as a freshman at Arizona State. And there was some promise there. A ton of weird stuff happens with the program. COVID happens. And then he transfers up a program and becomes insane and was the Heisman. That to me is significantly different than Tyler Shuck being at a very good program in Oregon, never holding the starting job, going to Texas Tech, struggling to hold it there, and then leveling down again to Louisville. Like that, it's just a very different, like not all journeys are the same. And I think that we've lost that a little bit with a guy like Shuck.
Speaking of journeys and not being the same and being the same, drafting and development offensive linemen versus free agency, because the Seahawks, they've flat out said this season they're looking to develop the guys. And in my head, I've been watching this team doing this podcast with Mike for years now. The developing aspect sounds a little fishy because they've had players here that they didn't develop and they just didn't work out. So what happens? They sign elsewhere. John Schneider is famous for his comments about not paying guards, basically saying they're not worth what we're spending and we're not going to pay them that. So if player A wants to go out and get $50 million here, cool. We're not going to pay him that. Player A ends up doing just fine. So I'm asking you, Derrik, how would you assess your team? Would you try to build from within and draft the guys and develop them? Or would you take risks, kind of what Super Bowl champs have done, which is go out and get certain players to bring their offensive line or their defensive line to the next level? How would you run that?
I think it actually kind of depends on which side of the line. I think defensive line it is a lot easier to go pay a big ticket free agent, especially if he's a pass rusher, and just get the production that he was getting at wherever it was. Because I think some of that sometimes can be a little bit less scheme dependent, and there's just so many good pass rushers out there. In most years, maybe not necessarily this year, but just like generally, you can either like low stakes trade for a guy or get like a tier 2 free agent who can give you 8 sacks, like that sort of thing. So I think that is a little bit easier to do. In terms of the offensive line, I think free agency for the most part for the offensive line is like, how do we get our finishing touch? Like go out and sign one guy that can like fix this hole that has been a huge thing for us. Like the Eagles last year signing Mekhi Becton. The Bucks also last year signing a guy like Ben Bredeson. Like if you can just get a guy who can just make sure we don't have a massive weak link on the offensive line, that's kind of the way to use free agency. Whereas I think for the offensive line, I like to use the draft as much as possible. Spend your picks in the first 3 rounds to be like, these are real deal guys that we don't want to let out of the building. Granted, like you said, not sure the Seahawks have been the best at that, especially along the interior, but it's the right idea. Whether or not they ever get there, we'll see.
Well, John, you got the blessing. You have the right idea. You're just going to have to hit at some point because, boy, you are missing a lot.
You know what's funny about John's comment? I don't know if I mentioned this on the show. Well, maybe we have. We talked about that comment of like guards are overdrafted and overpaid. John said that infamously last offseason, said that on the radio. And it was funny because not funny if you're a Seahawks fan, but I believe he was saying that in the context of Damian Lewis getting paid by Carolina. It was, it was like, oh, I'm not going to pay that. Forget what they gave D-Lou. And I think Carolina also paid Robert Hunt. And it was just like, oh my God, they spent like $100 million plus on guards. And John's like, without naming Carolina directly, it was like, I'm not going to do that. But the funny part is, it's like, well, Carolina now has guards. You don't. So yeah, even if you're trying to be fiscally responsible, everyone would agree with that. No one would agree with, Geno back there getting beat to hell. So yeah, it's very tough there up front.
It cost Carolina a lot of money, but then they had one of the best run games in the league with like kind of a whatever running back room, like a decent running back room. And then they actually were finally able to protect whatever quarterback they were in there, whether it was Andy Dalton early in the year or Bryce Young. And we saw Bryce Young's rookie year, dude was getting smacked left and right, no matter what they were calling. Whereas in 2024, it's not a perfect offensive line yet, but it is significantly better than it was last year. So it cost them a little bit, but they got their money's worth.
Yeah, I like how you framed that about it's like getting the final ingredients, whatever you're cooking, is free agency. Yeah, like if you go there, okay, man, we need the meat, we need the starch dish, blah blah blah. It's like, okay, no, this is probably not gonna work. We only have $10, but if we just need like some pepper, okay, that's fine.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yes, if we just need pepper, we just need a dessert. So just go grab a cake from the store right fast. Like we don't need the whole meal. All right, in the name of free agency and fixing the Seahawks, let's start with up front. Derrik, congratulations. You're the GM of the Seahawks. This is a big moment in your life. We're very happy for you. Can you fix our O-line here? What are we doing in free agency if you got to go out there and try to address this thing?
I mean, it's funny we said all this stuff about the guards, but like it's very obviously the thing they need to fix, right? Like they're probably not going to move on from either of these tackles. They're both young guys, and I know Lucas in particular has had a lot of injury stuff, but I assume, is going to be the starter regardless. And then Olu at center was like fine. I know a lot of people want to go out and sign, Drew Dahlman. It seems like every fan base in the league wants to go fix their center situation and sign Drew Dahlman. He's randomly the like biggest ticket free agent on the market. But I'm not sure paying him what he's going to cost is like you're going to get the value over what you're just getting from Olu right now. Like I would rather give him another year, see how it goes. Whereas the guard situation, if they want to pay top of the market, they could. Like Will Fries, who plays for the Colts, he has developed really nicely. He missed a lot of last year, so maybe you can get a slight discount from him because he missed a lot of last year. But I think if they want to get a firmly above average starter who what you're paying for, assuming he's healthy, that would be a really good option. After that, it actually kind of gets pretty tricky in terms of free agency for guards. Like at that point, you're kind of trying to swing on guys like Nate Herbig, who has played for the Steelers, and he's looked okay at times, but you're kind of taking a gamble that your coaching staff can get the most out of him, which, as you guys have said, I don't know if the Seahawks have ever really done that with offensive linemen. So I think with the specific area that the Seahawks struggle with, fixing it in free agency would be hard. They would almost certainly have to do it through the draft with like you draft Kelvin Banks and kick him into guard, something like that.
I was trying to think before we hopped on, like when's the last time an offensive lineman has played the best version of himself it's like been his best self here, because we've seen that with corner quite a bit now.
Yes.
But even if it's just guys just playing with a higher floor, like we just saw with Josh Jobe, Michael Jackson was a lot more playable here than he was, I think, in Dallas or wherever he was before that. DJ Reed is probably the poster child for that. Shaquille Griffin in the inverse, perhaps. It just doesn't feel like it happens here. I think I landed on like Brandon Shell, maybe. I think that might
from the
have been
Jets. That's a good one, Mike. Yeah.
When you got to go that far down the list, oh man.
I may be missing maybe DJ Fluker. I just don't remember how he was with the Chargers. I'd have to really go back and look. But yeah, it took me a little bit. As you see, I'm going back here a little bit. I'm a few presidencies away from where we are now. That shows you kind of how tough it is. Okay, let's say, all right, bang. I'm Will Fry's agent. All right, cool. Let's do it. I love Seattle. I want to go there. I like seafood and tossing fish. What you paying me?
That's actually a good question. The problem is like you're going to pay him a little bit less again because I think he missed the injury, and he's probably not going to make anywhere near what like I think Chris Lindstrom is still the top of the market. Like he's not going to make anything near that. He's probably not going to make like what the tag was for Trey Smith. He's probably in that tier 2 where he's making, I would say like $15+ million a year, which I think is one of those things where because Seattle has been so bad at it for so long, I would be willing to pay that kind of money for a guard, even if like Will Fries isn't, a surefire Pro Bowl or anything. But I think they need to fix it. And like, I think if the John Schneider could get over the not paying guard things, I would be willing to do it.
See, I was that's funny you mentioned that. I went to PFF. There's a lot of places that project contracts. They got him at 4 years, 14.3. There you go.
Pretty close. Yeah, right around that range.
All right, we fixed our guard situation. Let's pretend we're playing with unlimited cash. And let's say let's say I'm just not sold on the Olu thing. I want someone to come in here and compete. Where are we going?
I mean, if it's going to be free agents, your only other bet is, funny enough, Will Fries was my guard solution. The possible center solution is also from the Colts, which is Ryan Kelly. The issue kind of with Ryan Kelly, he's still a good player, but he's a little bit older. He's had some injury stuff, and he's had some like personal stuff where it is possible that he wants to retire a little bit early and kind of just move on from football. So I honestly just don't know what his market's going to look like. Outside of that, I don't know if there's like a center on the free agent market that's going to do a whole lot of needle moving for me.
Wow. Oh man, Chris is dire out here, man.
Hey, you ain't got to tell us, man. We just got to watch the game to talk about it. The fans about to be, oh, why are you doing this to us, Derek? Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm not fulfilling my duties as the new GM very well.
Well, I think you're running in probably the same dilemma that the Seahawks have been running into probably when they're having their free agent meetings the last few weeks, and it's really unfortunate the lack of stability they've had. I was looking at since Justin Britt tore his ACL in 2019. I think they've had the same starter at center for multiple seasons once. I think it was just Ethan Posick from 2020 to 2021. And even then, they signed BJ Finney actually from the Steelers to start instead of him. And then COVID happened and BJ actually just literally never played. I think they shipped him off in the Carlos Dunlap trade. So it's like they never really, since then, you're looking at Austin Blythe, Evan Brown, Connor Williams, now Olu. You can't even just get the same guy. You get to the point where you're at the grocery store shopping hungry, which is what you do not want to do. But I think also, Chris, now listening to Derek, maybe we just got to go watch some Colts film. Maybe that's it. We got to watch the Colts film. And that's how we fix the Seahawks. Pull some guys from there and make sure Geno doesn't get beat to hell in 2025.
I want to stick with the O-line because there was a veteran released. And Derek, maybe you can give more insight. I did go look at his PFF grades. And Mike and I aren't the biggest PFF guys, but it just gave me a glimpse as to, how effective he was. So I want to know your thoughts if you even know about this guy, because Alex Kappa, he was guard for the Bengals. They cut him. I think he's going to cost like $8 million. They were like, you know what? We're cool off that. Is that a piece that could essentially just come in and be okay, maybe a little bit better than average and maybe help some of the younger guys in this roster? Or is that like, you know what, Chris, there's a reason they cut him. Stay away from that guy.
I think he could be mildly better than a guy like Anthony Bradford was in pass protection, but I just don't know if you're going to get any, like, I just really didn't like him as a run blocker. And I also the Bengals interior in particular I'm like the biggest hater. I really don't like what they've, even the dart throws they've tried to fix that position, like with Alex Kappa, I haven't really enjoyed. So if they want to make the low level bet and maybe actually just move him to left guard, I think that could make some sense. But I mean, when you look at the guard market, it really kind of just comes down to, like I said, you're either taking the bets on guys like Kappa or Nate Herbig, who have been on and off starters, or a guy like Tevin Jenkins, who actually looks decent when he plays. He just plays like 8 games a year. So it's like you're just betting on these guys who have one issue or another.
That's fair. I
Oh,
like the way you
man.
broke that down. So the Seahawks looks like you're gonna have to go to the draft as you said you would do. So draft and develop. It might not be your year this year, but maybe 2-3 years down the line, the offensive line is where you need it to be, and you have the quarterback for the future to get you that Super Bowl championship that you've been looking for.
I got one more before we move off the O-line. Could I interest you in a Josh Myers, maybe?
I don't love Josh Myers. Josh Myers is a little bit light in the pants for me to play center. And if you're gonna be like a little bit light in the pants, you need to be like Drew Dahlman, who's like a really insane athlete and very, very smart. Myers isn't quite to that level for me.
We tried,
All right,
Mike.
Chris. Yeah, no, it really, I think, you know what, we really just like in like 10 minutes or something, just smushed in. I feel like a version of what the Seahawks have probably been talking about for the last like 3 weeks or whatever. Probably John Benton, their new O-line coach, Clint Kubiak, and all of the 7 run game specialists they've hired to the staff since then, probably all sat in the room and just did what we did. And we're like, all right, Kelvin Banks, brother,
Yep.
you are a
Let's hope Armand Membu falls. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, kid from Missouri. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
You are a Seahawk, buddy. With the 18th pick. Yeah, not great. I got one more offense, actually. So let's say I don't know when I would anticipate some type of move with Tyler Lockett at some point. Maybe by the time this podcast drops, that something has happened with Tyler Lockett. The Seahawks have already gotten the business of releasing people. They released Rayshon Jenkins, George Fant, Roy Robertson Harris, and Draymond Jones. So probably some more releases coming. So let's just assume that Tyler, for whatever reason, is not on the Seahawks roster in 2025. But we still need a guy. We're not going to trot out just Derek Young, Jake Bobo. They're behind Jackson and DK. I need a receiver. Which you got anything for me?
Depends how much you're willing to spend, right? And like what exactly you're looking for. I think if they want to just go for a guy who like gives you an obvious skill set on the outside, but is a little bit boring, but is something different from what they have, they could go digging a little bit lower in the bin and get like a Josh Palmer. Like he's not a very exciting player, but he'll block for you. He can play on the perimeter. Every now and then he'll make a contested catch. It's like, that's not sexy, but if they keep DK and Jackson Smith and Jigba, it's like, okay, that's something. If they want to go a little bit higher on the market and find the guy that kind of makes the most sense for their team, I have been hawking this guy for every single team I can. Darius Slayton is going to make somebody very happy. And like, if they want a guy who can stretch the field a little bit and like kind of dynamic with the ball in his hands every now and then, he might have a drop or two that's really annoying. But I think Seahawks fans are used to that. I think that's the guy that you would want to pay for.
Speaking of Darius Slayton, he lit the Seahawks up for 10 catches and like a $190. So I'm sure Mike McDonald would love to bring him to Seattle to work out the DB room because
he's like, wait, that guy's Tyreek Hill. I need him in my roster right now.
It was crazy. I said, they didn't know he was playing? Like, what's going on here? My man's running slant routes, cooking everybody, catching contested catches. He was doing it. So I like that. Darius Slayton had my ears perk up for sure.
No, he only had 2 100-yard games last year, and one of them was against the Seahawks. Amazing. Yeah, he only had 2 touchdown receptions. That's probably a quarterback fault, but he only had 2 touchdown receptions all year, and then one of them was against the Seahawks. I honestly think that if we've had this, Derek, actually a couple times over the last few years where you can see John Snyder's logic on a free agent, almost like being, did you see when he played us? You know, like we've seen that a little bit. Honestly, the Mike McDonald hire was that. Yeah. It was
yeah. Like, that dude, I remember writing about that game where Geno just like his head was spinning against Mike McDonald's Ravens. Because I remember at one point I was like, Mike McDonald called his defense this week in a way that he never did before that and never did after that the entire season. It was really cool. So it is funny that he was like, man, he smoked us. We got to go hire that guy.
And I think the Sam Howell thing was the same way. It was like, I mean, shoot, did you see when he played us? You know, like lit us up. And I bring that up to say, I think if they were to sign guys like Darius Slayton, I don't think they would. I agree. I think it would cost too much. But if they were signed like Darius Slayton and Josh Myers, I think that we'd hear John say a version of, hell, did you see when they played us? You know, that would be, particularly Josh, because the first half of that Packers game against the Seahawks is him driving his value up and driving Ernest Jones's value down for the entire first half of Sunday Night Football. And unfortunately, we'll get to Ernest a little bit later. I don't want to go position specific on defense because I don't feel like they're super needy there. I'm just kind of giving you free reign, Derek. If I'm just like, hey, we watched Mike McDonald's defense. You saw what they did so far. Of note, they really only cut Draymond Jones. I give you some money to spend. Where are you going? Is it one that's like, this is good? This guy can make the Seahawks defense better.
I think corner is the best spot because to me, I want to have decent play on the outside, bigger corners, which is kind of what he likes in his system, and then just unleash Devin Witherspoon to do whatever the hell he wants from the nickel. And so it kind of goes back to, like, again, how much do they want to spend on this? If they want to bet that Rasul Douglas is not going to hit the age cliff, he's a 30-year-old guy. He's bigger. He's already a little bit slower. But if they want to make that bet, I think that could make a lot of sense for them. He's a really good tackler, incredibly physical, smart player, just can't quite run the way that he maybe used to. But I think if that's your cornerback too, that would be totally acceptable. If they want to spend, like, if this is the one position they go and throw a lot of money at, if it's either Carlton Davis or Charvarius Ward, I would be incredibly happy. Like, both those guys they're my kind of corners, kind of like we talked about with the quarterbacks earlier of, like, style of preference. Davis and Ward are they're long and they're going to punch you in the face, man. And that's it's kind of what Mike McDonald's defense loves. And I think it's a little bit what this defense needs. So to me, it would just be like, can they get one of these cornerbacks?
Where are you at? Sorry, this is another one I didn't really prep you for. Where are you on Rick Woolen, by the way? So we're sort of talking about corners.
You know how people like to talk about a lot how cornerback is a very volatile position, like production wise. It's because of players like Tariq Woolen, who are like, he's incredibly athletic, but he really likes to take some chances. And sometimes that's and there are just certain routes that he just doesn't cover well. Like, trying to watch Tariq Woolen, like, settle and drive on a dig route can be pretty rough sometimes, like, if he's not anticipating it. And so that's where I think a lot of it comes from, is like, if he just in a given year, more times than not, kind of gets beat by the game plan and isn't able to, like, be on top of stuff and really drive on routes, that's where you can get him being beat a lot. And so maybe another year in Mike's system could help him out, but I would lean towards him being like, can we get another guy in the building to at least, like, start to push him a little bit?
He is ranking, Chris, let me know if I'm missing somebody, but I think he is probably ranking number 2 on the divide the fan base rankings right now. I think. Am I missing? Maybe DK's higher. Would you say DK's higher or Reek? They're both dividing the fan base pretty tough.
It's definitely Reek, man. My man came back after being benched. People are like, why is he in the game? It's like, damn, bro, he's actually playing fine.
Right, like, let him at least try to earn his job back.
Sheesh, man.
Yeah, I guess it's probably it's more severe on the Reek side. Probably like there's like like Reek's got all this upside portion of the fan base. Then there's like the he's unplayable side. Whereas,
I'm not like unplayable bad. It's just like you get why a guy like that, the way that he plays, is gonna. There's just certain plays you're gonna have to live with. Certain routes he's gonna get beat on more often than not.
He kind of reminds me. Let me see if this comparison sticks. He almost reminds me a little bit of like the corner version of Sam Darnold, where it's like Sam's best 20 throws in his NFL career probably is like that best 20. If I just showed that to somebody 20 years from now, they'd be like, oh, he's in the Hall of Fame, right? And like, buddy, I got some news for you. Sit down, let me talk to you about this guy named Sam. I show you Reek's best 30 reps, particularly against the best guys. I give you his best reps against Jamar, Justin Jefferson, Puka. I'm missing some wide receiver ones, probably Mike Evans, whatever. D-Hop, Marvin Harrison Jr. Boy, you'd think that was 2013 Richard Sherman, some of those clips. And then I pull up some of the other ones and be like, I gotcha. I see why people argued about him online for hours. I get it.
Exactly. It's like, if he can get hands on you, okay, he can be pretty good. If he's just got to run and chase on a deep over route, he is one of the best corners in the league at that, because not many guys can just run like that. Yeah. It's some of the other stuff where he's got to be a little bit lower to the ground, a little bit quicker, that it's like, all right, not your best.
This is selfish because this is part of like I'm trying to like do a story version of what we're doing now, which is how this kind of idea came to my head. If I got a bargain shop, could I interest you in a Brandon Stevens or a Christian Fulton, or is it just a no-go?
Christian Fulton, you could interest me in a little bit. He played actually like relatively well last year for the Chargers, and he kind of fits the ethos of what they need. He is a guy who you can play him on the line. He can play outside. He can be a little bit physical at the line of scrimmage. He's another guy who doesn't maybe turn his hips the way that you want for like a great cornerback. He can be a little bit grabby, but honestly, if this is going to be their number 2 corner and they just need better play than they got last year, I think it's a pretty decent bet to make. Yeah.
There we go. Chris,
you got one.
Brandon must not be it. That's just
I mean, maybe Brandon just because he played for Mike before, but Fulton just based on last year, I kind of like.
No, I'm with you. There's some games last year where I'm like, oh, the Ravens are going to lose this unless number 21 gets his stuff together. And one of them they did lose. I think it was to the Raiders. I want to say. I think they just threw at him with Devontae Adams the entire fourth quarter and ended up winning the game.
My joke with the Ravens now is they're just going to lose to Gardner Minshew in September every year. Because remember the year before they lost to when he was on the Colts.
That's right.
Both at home, I think, in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Just weird games there. Yeah, and if you know anybody in Ravens Twitter, you bring up that name. They're like, huh? Yeah, there's a reason our GM is letting them hit the market, guys. Our young corner who has played well for Mike McDonald. All right, Chris, we got any more Ernest Jones guys before we go to one of our favorite dudes?
I'll go to a guy that was in Seattle that you actually have on the list, Mike, and that's DJ Reed. I know things didn't work out with the Jets just because they were the Jets. Organization failure. Aaron Rodgers stunk up the joint. He played okay as a quarterback, though. But anywho, is DJ Reed, does he fit? I know he's undersized, and as you mentioned, Mike's looking at bigger corners, but could he come in and maybe push Reek? Maybe he's that veteran that could push Reek and get him to be more consistent. Because DJ Reed knows, I mean, how old is DJ Reed, Mike? Is he 29?
Something young.
Okay, well, I didn't look it up, but let's say he's 29. Is he the guy that can push Reek, you think, and get him to be consistent where we can say that's a Hall of Famer in 10 years?
Yeah, he's a little bit, like you said, on the smaller side compared to some of the other guys that Mike typically likes. But I do think that Reed is still good. Obviously, I think a lot of guys on the Jets last year did not play their best ball, and I don't necessarily think that that's reflective of how good some of those guys are. Like, I don't think Sauce Gardner played his best ball, but we know that he's maybe the best cornerback in the league when he's playing, at his best. So I think DJ Reed, if he just got to a new situation again with Mike McDonald, who we know is a good coach, and I don't think it's going to have the turmoil that the Jets had last year. I think, one, he could solidify the spot. And then, like you mentioned, just bringing in another veteran guy who's done this for a while, played in really, really special defenses. Like that Jets defense in 2023 was one of the best. Bringing in a guy like that who could, I think, maybe get Tariq Woolen to take the job a little bit, not more seriously, but just like hone in on some of the details and stuff. I do think that could be pretty valuable.
I'm really excited about the idea, whoever they get, the idea, because I do think this is their thinking as well. I do think we are simulating what's going on in the Seahawks building over the last month. Just the idea that the floor can be a lot higher, I think, if you just get just someone who you don't even got. I need a stud across from Reek and Spoon. Just someone who I can just trust to hold it down for a second. Like it's 3rd and 7, their number 2, them being the other team. The number 2 receiver is like decent. Just don't get cooked. And we should be fine. Like if you just don't get walked down by whoever the other team's number 2 is, like the floor of the defense just comes up to a much higher level. And I think actually it's kind of already high.
Don't be the mark. That's it. Don't be the guy when it's 3rd and 7, the other 10 guys on defense know like, man, I know where the ball's going, and we just got to pray that guy doesn't give it up. Just don't be that guy.
Yes, that's it. And not to say Josh Jobe was that for what it's worth. Josh actually played
right.
pretty well. But like if you just whatever the next step up is, I think there's a benefit there because they're not paying Reek, they're not paying Spoon. Like if you I feel like you can splurge a little bit there. And we've seen them take the swings, the low cost, the Quentin Dunbar, the Akilla Witherspoon. I'm going deep in the
I'm like a sucker for Akilla Witherspoon. I know he's like never more than a replacement level corner, but I love him so much.
Oh, this is a pro, mostly because his pops is a cool guy. His name's Lucky. Shout out Lucky. This is a pro Akilla show as well. Yes, I had very mixed emotions when he caught that ball, the interception there off I think it's Zach, whoever's helmet it was. That kind of almost basically eliminated the Seahawks in week 18 or 17, whatever week that was. I was like, oh man, good for Akilla. Oh damn, I don't get to cover the playoffs. That was like my thought for like 5 months. I was like, oh man, that's a great catch. But yeah, he's a feisty dude, long guy, Like he's a dog. I like him too. I had him on my list as well, but I just think the ending here was so bad that I don't think he'd come back. They traded him for like a 2025 fifth round pick in 2023 or whatever. That's how you know they were just like, dude, get out. This was before the regular season too. It was pretty bad. Pretty bad. All right. Let's move to the final spot. Let's talk Ernest Jones. We get into our inside linebacker convo. I also, first, this is not a question, Derek. I just gotta say, I appreciate you. I appreciate Deontay Lee. Shout out Deontay. The people who appreciate and help me learn more about inside backers. I feel like real football is back, and the inside linebackers matter right now. I got nothing to quantify it or anything. I just feel like I'm watching ball and listening to discourse. I feel like inside linebacker play lets us know that real football is back right now.
I love it so much, man. Like that was, I think what people, because I honestly think some of this is influenced by a little bit of the too high revolution. And I think when some of that was happening, people were like, man, you got to have these defensive tackles that can hold up, and maybe your edge body's got to change. And oh, now we're doing more stuff in the back end with the safeties. They got to be smart and stuff. Hey, man, if we're bleeding bodies out of the box, those linebackers better know what the hell they're doing. And so I think you've seen the guys who can really be needle movers. They're worth paying. They're worth drafting high if you can hit on one of them. That one's a little bit trickier because the college game is so bad for producing linebackers. But if you can find a good one, hold on to them.
It seems like safety and linebacker when I watch some college stuff. Now I'm not really the college game confuses me a little bit more just because I don't watch it as much, at least on film. When I'm watching though, just like without knowing much about any of the teams, I'm just like, those are two positions where I'm like, okay, this guy must be a redshirt freshman or something, or is he the coach's kid? Because it's like he shouldn't be out here. I'm pretty sure, particularly at safety. When I'm watching safeties, and it was funny. John Snyder said the same thing. He said that's the hardest position to scout right now is safety, outside of quarterback. He cut quarterback from the discussion. He was like, it's safety, and I was like, yeah, maybe it's because I watch a lot of Pac-12 football. And Pac-12 football, rest in peace to the former Pac-12. It was really, really rough. And then inside linebacker as well. I'm just like, gotta be the coach's nephew. There's no way this kid should be out here. He's 215 pounds to start. Like, where's the buffness on the backers? I'm gonna use this conversation right now to just kind of ask where you Ernest Jones could be signed by the time this comes out. But just before that happens, where are you on Ernest Jones, the Seattle's #1 free agent right now?
I like Ernest Jones. I think he's not ever again going to be as dynamic as some of the best linebackers in the league because he just doesn't run the way that the best guys. When you think about 2023 Roquan Smith, okay, that guy can really run. Dre Greenlaw, when he's at his best, man, he can run. Fred Warner, okay, he can run. Zach Bond this last year, he can run. Ernest Jones wins more by like what's going on above the shoulders. He's an incredibly smart player. His first step is always in the right direction. That's, by the way, if you watch a lot of the best linebackers, if you watch which direction their first step is going and how far downhill they're moving, you can more often than not tell who is good. Like the guys who are, it's a short step and maybe they don't know where they want to go. That guy's going to be behind the play. But guys like Ernest Jones, they're quick on their first step to get in front of stuff. And I think the other thing with him, and you kind of saw this a little bit with, when the Ravens traded for Roquan Smith, just having a guy who very obviously understands the defense, can glue everything together and be at least above average in coverage and make sure the safeties have a little bit of help and can pass stuff off correctly. It does so much for Mike McDonald's defense. Ernest Jones checks all those boxes. So he might not be like, 25 tackles for loss type of linebacker, but he checks every other box.
This is Ernest Jones. You can appreciate Ernest Jones like you do and like Chris does by just watching. I appreciated him almost purely by talking to the teammates. When you mentioned the safeties, is why I thought of this. If you just never watched a Seahawks game and just only knew about Ernest Jones through how Julian Love talks about him, you would think that he and Julian Love are like buddies from the sandbox. Like Julian Love was like it was like a sigh of relief every week. I remember one time I was just like, yeah, what's going on with you guys' run defense? It's a lot better now over the last month. And he was like, yeah, we got number 13. Like that's why he was like, yeah, that guy. I think he pointed to him because he was standing nearby. He was like, that dude over there. We have him now. So we stopped the run now. It was like almost that simple. The upgrade that he gave, Chris, you can attest to this. It was like watching totally different defense there once he showed up after the bye week.
Absolutely. You turn on the film and you just see number 13 reading it and going. As you mentioned, he might not be the fastest, but he knows where to be and he's going to attack it. And there are so many plays where he's just run stops at the line of scrimmage. Like, you're not getting a yard, He didn't get a tackle for loss, but it's a stop. 2nd and 10. Like, you saw that so many times. Seeing the screen before it happens. It was just like, Mike McDonald, you know what you're doing, man. So any other player you want, I say go out and get. Just let John Schneider know, because what John Schneider brought in, they got out immediately. Mike said, hey, I can't do this no more. We're going to have to cut both of them. Like, for real. I got a guy I want, so go get him, but we got to get rid of these two dudes first. And you just saw the defense be a lot better. And Julian Love pointed out, yeah, number 13 over there. He makes us look really good. And I think he did a really good job. I'm excited to see what he can bring with a full season with Mike McDonald and how much better he can be.
I'm going to read Derek. This is the top. We'll go through the top 10 inside linebackers by average annual salary real quick before we get out of here. We got Roquan, 20 mil. Fred, 19. Tremaine Edmonds, 18. Matt Milano, 14.1. Patrick Queen, 13.6. That's the fifth highest. JOK from the Browns, 12.5. Aziz, 11.3. Zaire Franklin, my man from Jacksonville, whose name is too long. Bobby out there in the Giants. There's my top 10. They're all, those last three guys all making about 10 million. Where are you putting Ernest on a new deal? If you're I'm Ernest's agent, I call you, say, yo, we need a bag. How you responding?
The complication with Ernest, like, if it was purely on quality of play, I don't necessarily think he's like the 5th best linebacker in the league, but if he made about what Patrick Queen was making, just accounting for cap going up, you got to always overpay for guys on new deals, all that stuff, like that would be perfectly acceptable to me. The complication with Ernest Jones is just the knee stuff is a little bit scary to me. Like, I think some of his knee health over the years is part of why he can't run quite the way that he used to. And you just wonder, when is that cliff coming? So I would still think he probably gets at least like 9 million, but I do think the injury stuff and wondering where the cliff is going to come is probably going to hurt him in these discussions a little bit. But I would not be surprised if he's in the back end of that top 10 when we get here again next year.
Fix the Seahawks. I think we did.
I tried.
I think we did.
We tried.
Well, it speaks to the difficulty is this is the discussions that they have. This is why John Schneider probably sits there, has these discussions, and then I think they had like $50 million last year, and brought back a Laken Tomlinson, a Jonathan Hankins, a Rayshon Jenkins, a Kayvon Wallace, a Tremaine Ankrum, a Nick Harris, like all these guys, Laviska Shenault, guys who like literally did not even make it through the season. Forget playing well. You got a bunch of Tyrell Dodson, Jerome Baker. I'm naming guys who just by Christmas were gone. By Thanksgiving, we're gone. That's why they have these discussions, and then get there. I'm like, oh damn, I'm not paying any of these guys. They just cut Draymond Jones. They gave him $51 million a couple off seasons ago. Probably looking back, like, we probably shouldn't have done that. We were shopping hungry. So we appreciate your effort here, Derek. We do. I think you did a good job.
Thank you.
I think our line got better, if nothing else. I think so.
Yeah, it needs to be. It would be hard for it to be worse, barring some injuries. So I hope we could fix a little bit. But this was really fun. I loved
What's
it.
crazy? Crazy, Derek, is I said that exact same thing because I was of the belief going into this past season. I was like, the Seahawks O-line is going to be a little better. I expect that. They're going to do. I think they'll be a lot better. Boy, do I wish I could have those words back because that offensive line got worse. And as you mentioned, it can't get much worse. Man, I stepped in crow on that one.
That's a good point. Maybe with the Seahawks off, it's one of those things where it's like Robert actually made the joke this last offseason we were talking about the Jaguars because their 2023 season kind of didn't end all that well. And we kind of made the joke of like, it can't be worse in 2024. And then you remember like, it's the Jaguars, dude. It could probably be worse. And so the Seahawks offensive line a little bit has that effect.
Yes.
Unfortunately. I like, yeah, man, I can't get that much worse. And I went to the joint practices in Nashville. And that's the first time the Seahawks, Pete didn't do joint practices. So this was a very new thing for me. I had never covered them before. So that was like a new way of assessing a roster in the summer. And I was on the plane home like, this could get bad. And that's before they put Connor Williams out. Keep practicing those. Maybe he did. But it was really, really bad. Like Jeffrey Simmons, his trainer, posted a video of him just like tossing like Laken Tomlinson, I think, on Instagram. And I remember thinking, this is going to be a long year. And before I realized Connor Williams was not good at snapping the ball. And then just decided to quit football in November. So, yeah, it can. The Seahawks and the Jacksonville Jaguars, it can get worse. But thanks to you, Derek, it's not. We fixed it. We got receivers. We got big corners. We're paying guards. It's a little dicey, but hey, we just pluck Ryan Kelly. We get Will Fries. We're good. We're doing okay. Last thing before we get out of here, got anything you want to plug? Any stories you're working on? Anything you and Robert are cooking on the Athletic Football Show? Floor is yours. Social media, plug whatever you want. You got it.
Yeah. So obviously, we do 3-4 podcast episodes a week, but for free agency, I think Monday of free agency when it opens up, we are going to be streaming for like 5-6 hours, like the entire day of free
Oh my
agency.
God.
So yeah, if you guys want to have like a live watch along for free agency, see what we have to say about your teams immediately, check that out. And then I will be charting the top 2 quarterbacks from this year, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. I think that'll be out in 2 or 3 weeks, like maybe the end of this month. So those are the 2 big things I've got cooking up right now.
I can't wait to check that out, particularly when you get to the Cal game from Cam Ward and Shedeur. I'm low-key talking myself into him at 18 because he seems to be falling, quote unquote, this time. Oh, hey, wait a minute now. I could talk myself into that. Deion Sanders at practice, good for my numbers. Selfishly, those are Mike reasons. Those are not football reasons. Those are purely Mike reasons. But Derrik, thank you. Make sure you guys, what's your Twitter? Plug that real fast.
At QB Class with a K. On Twitter and Blue Sky, it's the same thing. So
there we go, man. It does great work. Before we were colleagues at the Athletic, I was reading all your stuff, all the QB charting. I really appreciate the insight. Sometimes I was like, wow, I think a quarterback sucks, or I think a quarterback's good. Sometimes if like you or Nate Tice is on board with what I thought before I reached out or read you guys, it makes me feel a little better. I'm like, oh, Derrik thinks he sucks too. Great. I'm not bugging. Or Nate Tice. Or Nate's like, oh yeah, no, that guy's great. I'm like, okay, cool. Okay, I'm not seeing things. So really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. Thank you guys for listening to the Seahawks Man to Man podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. Seahawks Man to Man is the name of the channel. The Seahawks Man, the number 2 man. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, all those platforms. Like, share, follow, all that stuff. We really appreciate that love and support. We'll come back to you guys. Probably do a free agency show. We will not be live for 5 hours. We will not. We will just do one show.
You,
we
man.
will record that. But until next time, you guys have fun. Enjoy your week. Catch you later. Peace.